dynamic path of Raja Yoga. I'll read it. Man's persistent effort has been to unravel the mystery of nature, and it has widened the frontiers of knowledge. So in his probe into everything, so in his probe into everything that he sees in nature continues. So in another place, Babaji mentions that spirituality is a science, and then he feels that it is a science only, just like any physics or anything. But modern man has not yet treated this subject. He's used all his energies to understand everything outside the human body, that is the physics, chemistry, space, and genetic studies. I mean, he knows everything about the mystery of coronavirus or quantum physics. Slowly now he is trying to understand what is consciousness. That means he has to study his own mind. To study an objective phenomena outside like atoms and all is very easy. But to study the mind itself, that is called the spiritual science. So study of mind requires rigorous training because it involves, scientists. When Babaji used the word science, you must understand that science involves very accurate observations. Like when Galileo came with the idea that the earth runs around the moon, with a telescope he was making accurate accurate observations, and then based on the observations you would come on inference. So yogis are people who are scientists who study the nature of the mind itself. So we should undergo rigorous training in ourselves to develop the capacity of observing our own mind. Like, for example, all of us now we are sitting, we can observe our own mind and watch what is the state of mind when we are approaching, trying to read Master's word. Is it associated with reverence, or is it associated with a curiosity, or is it associated with a feeling that I will learn some tip from the Master which will help me relieve me from my suffering? Or what is the amount of the nature of that feeling? What is the intensity of the feeling? How long that feeling is lasting in your mind? There are several things to observe in the mind. So unless all of us try to, and that involves a practice of recording your observations of your mind in an honest way. Honesty is very important. Satyame jayate. Truth is important. So truthfully, you should be able to know what are your feelings, what is the density of the feeling, how long the feeling is lasting, what is the feeling you're having when you're trying to understand Babuji's message of 1964. You should be able to. So then only you can call it that we are scientifically approaching the spiritual subject. So this idea should be important. So that's why there's an importance of writing diaries also. So now there is a lot of interest all around the world. The final, what is called the hard problem of consciousness. What is consciousness? Nobody is able to define consciousness, but they're trying to study, and man's understanding has improved remarkably over the history of human evolution. So he says, so his probe into everything that is in nature continues. When we seek anything, we find something for our thinking. And when we go beyond it, we find mystery behind the mystery. He says mystery behind the mystery. When you attain realization, or when you attain liberation, or when you reach your goal, the mystery is solved. It's no more a mystery. Like suppose this phone is there. Suppose we show this phone to some person 100 years ago, he will think it is a miracle or a mystery, how talk is coming, how images are coming, how immediately you can talk to thousands of people. He will think it is a miracle or a mystery. But now we know it's not a mystery at all, because we know how the thing works. So the mystery will be solved once you understand the true nature of your mind. We go beyond it, we find mystery behind mystery. When the thinking itself takes the further evolution, it leads us to what is behind everything. Our ancients, when they peeped into it, went direct to find the ultimate cause of the world, the relation between man and God, and the static and dynamic values of things representing nature. If we really peep into it, we find the constructive and destructive powers in the forms of atoms and cells. Power arcs are also there. Positive and negative cells are there, giving full description of their existence. Our sages felt themselves pledged to utilize all these powers, appearing mysterious in constructive work. They even went beyond everything, which has resulted in the discovery of some moments being the cause of all existence. When we go to this extent, we find the center and its region giving us the knowledge of their existence. Now we proceed on. What is there above and below it? We see everything tending towards the center, and the center itself yawning towards the circumference. After our adventure, we initiated the value of our existence and felt the cooperation of the highest power that is around us. Now, this was the main current of our thinking, which diverted our attention to the main theme that is being played. Gradually, we could know the function of the movement in the human body. The way is made open to lead up to the central region. So he's describing the process of exploration of the nature of the mind, how the rishis, the ancient rishis who wrote the Vedas and Upanishads, how they study. Now the modern man is now slowly studying what is consciousness, but then for the last 5,000 years, the yogis, they have seriously dealt with this issue, and then they could pierce the whole thing. I mean, they could understand the whole mystery. Like when Buddha was enlightened, and then he said he used his mind became so pure, he was able to focus his mind on his past lives. And he says, I knew everything, what all, animal life he led, the kingly life, beggarly life, I mean, every gamut, like gods and everything. All thousands of lives he could see everything, and then he smiled at himself, and then he says, I know everything now. The mystery, there's no more mystery. He knew the entire reality. Like that, there are several sages who in our Vedic times and Upanishadic times, they could understand everything. We'll go ahead. In my opinion, we have solved the mystery if somehow we are able to solve our problem of life. When we visualized ourselves, we found that man is an epitome of the universe. This added to our advancement, and we have begun to study our own centers, their motions and work, and the functions of the human mind and body. The power we have got in us can also be utilized for the destructive purpose, but owing to the sacred pledge of our ancients, we avoid it altogether, and we utilize the power for the transformation of man. If we really peep into the constructive side, we get side by side the destructive things as well. And the neutrals are also there, which is yet to be explored by the scientists. Since we have no concern with these things, we leave them. We come to the constructive side. When we peep into ourselves with this idea, we find the higher centers focusing into our centers. But due to our wrong thinking and doings, the effect is not coming in at all. Like suppose, in our minds, suppose ill will or suppose jealousy, they have taken, kind of a permanent tenancy rights in your mind. So if they are there, then the divine center's influence will not percolate into that mind. So that is how, even if the master is transmitting from highest level, if those things are there and you are not nauseated by their presence, you are not interested in getting rid of those the pest-like existence occupying as a permanent tenant in your mind, it is not possible to for the divinity to percolate into that kind of a mind. So that is why he uses the word grossness for that. But due to a wrong thinking and doings, the effect is not coming in at all. The thick layer of grossness has settled so firmly over the centers as to make them quite impervious. That is why Babaji keeps on talking, my work is 95% cleaning only. I try to remove the grossness. That is why I am getting such very good results in my training, he says. There are so many centers in the human body whose working is both spiritual and worldly. Research is necessary to know all these things for the common good of mankind. It is said that you must understand that research is there, and then when Babuji was alive, SMRTI was formed, Sajmar Research Institute, with Dr. K.C. Vardachari as the director of that research institute, and under his guidance, some research work were activated. And in 69 in Tirupati, there was the first seminar happened where all the about 12, 13 people who have presented their papers on their research and on this. Afterwards, then it became inactive, and then it was restarted in 79 under the direction of Dr. Puja Sir. And then later on, Puja Sir wanted Imperians to carry on these activities. But that to carry on these kinds of activities, we require a band of people who are rigorously trained in their mind to observe correctly, and then purified their mind to such an extent that their mind is calm and they be able to observe all subtle feelings accurately and then record it in the paper. Unless we get such band of workers, it is difficult to do this kind of research. Even you see, to take PhD in some ordinary thing, people spend 8 to 10 hours in material science itself. I mean, you want to study about virology or something, people to get a PhD there, it will take 10, 15 years to understand completely about a particular segment of certain part of biology or whatever it is. Research is necessary to know all these things for the common good of mankind. It is said that it has been a subject for the weak who do not want to work further to direct their energy for the material uplift of mankind. That means the Western people, or the materialistic scientists have a notion that people who do meditation and who practice Raja Yoga, renouncing their worlds and going to ashrams and then spending hours together meditating, are escapists, or it is said that it has been a subject for the weak. So they are weak people, they are not able to face the problems of living, that's why they ran away from it. That is the idea held by many intellectuals. Thus spirituality is attacked by many of us, giving examples of the present day civilizations and of those who have gone with unlimited pace of materialism, making themselves as limited because they attempt for only the finite and afterwards they fall off. You see, whatever research we are doing in the ultimate analysis, it is finite only. I mean, the problem of human life is not solved. The frustration of humanity to find joy and happiness using the mind and body and the environment in which he is living has always ended in frustration for majority of the people. And the problems posed by these three forces, Adi Daivika, Adhyatmika, Adi Bhautika, are so formidable that generally man is frustrated in finding happiness with this mechanism And then and people who are weary and frustrated, and then who fail in finding problems to the finding solution to the problem of life, they only get attracted to yoga and meditation, spiritual way of life. So materialist people, they attempt only the finite, and afterwards they follow. The idea should be to proceed from the finite to the infinite. It should be the idea that we should also make the finite to be merged into the infinite. In other words, the finiteness should be glittering first, then we should proceed towards the base. And what is finiteness? The center in us has lost the capacity of grasping the infinite. That is the avidya, that is the maya, makes us think that the real happiness is possible only in money and friends and all this. And then the subtle presence of divine light in our heart, and which is the power which causes the whole body machinery to function, which is the power which runs, which causes the earth to move, and then the sun to shine, and the earth to revolve around the sun, and the galaxies, all the Rita is powered by that subtle divine presence. And that subtle the avidya is the awareness inside us that we are separate from that subtle power. So and because of that, all the troubles are there, and because of that, all the suffering is there. And what is finiteness? He's now giving you an answer to that. The center in us, that means the mind, and mind, which involves the buddhi, manasa, ahankara, and chitta, lost the capacity of grasping the infinite. That means it has come from that source, but it has lost the capacity to grasp it. The Sahaj Marg system stands for it and makes it possible for us to do our duty the way finiteness demands, and to proceed alongside towards the infinite. So we'll do our work normally. By doing our work, we are changing or transforming our mind as per the instructions of the master. And in the process, we are moving towards the infinite, and establish a firm link with the infinite, and finally merge with the infinite. That is the summum bonum of human existence. That is only possible with the grace of Babuji Maharaj. And that is what his system stands for. It reveals to us our duty as the foremost thing. So we should correct both the things. That is, we should fly with both the wings. If we attempt for the finite alone, we proceed with an unsound base. 99% of human population are proceeding with an unsound base. They attempt for the finite only. Their only goals are maximum comforts, maximum pleasures, or maximum name and fame. That's all about it. There's nothing beyond that. In the general average, 99% of the humanity, they are going about in life with an unsound base. We should attempt the finite for the infinite. For this, dynamic methods should be adopted. And what can those methods be? Only those which introduce from the very beginning the character of the infinite. I shall be very grateful to the readers if they ponder a little over this sentence. So he says he'll be grateful to all of us if we contemplate on this sentence. This can best be introduced by those who have imbibed the real characteristics within their own centers. So the trainers in the system, Babuji has created the system of trainers in whom the real characteristics is imbibed in their own centers, and who know how to draw in the power and piety from the higher centers to the lower ones. Lower ones means the centers of the Pindadesh, and who can transmit the effect into the Abhyasis so that they may adopt the same character. So this is the uniqueness of the institution of trainers which he has started. He has trainers also wanted to establish firm connection with the infinite. They wanted to absorb their mind into the infinite. They wanted to transcend the restricting nature of the ego, which creates a barrier between our mind and the infinite. So, and because of the grace of the master and because of the practice, the wheel, the so-called wheel, is removed, and then your mind becomes harmony and in tune with the will of the infinite. And those people, they can draw the divine vibrations from the higher centers, which are the Brahmanda and Parabrahmanda and central region centers. They can withdraw and bring it into the lower centers and then transmit that effect and then evoke the same spiritual feeling in the aspirant. So that is the uniqueness of his system actually, so that they may adopt the same character. For this, a strong dynamic hand is always necessary. As long as we do not remove grossness settled in our centers, the grace or effect of the higher centers remains far apart due to the grossness and complexities we have made. Our Sahajmarg recommends the method for the cleaning of the centers, and the master himself does it through the process of transmission. And he uses the word small m. Master means here the trainer who is, who always tries to absorb himself in the consciousness of the master and tries to live in the master. He is called the trainer. As long as the Abhyasi is not getting the grace direct, the teacher diverts the grace which is coming directly upon himself to the Abhyasi. So as long as the Abhyasi, so there is a stage in he talks where, the Abhyasi is directly connected to the center, and then the duty of the guide is over. That means the child is born into the world. He remains for 7 months under the influence of the Guru, and then he gets nourishment from the thoughts of the Guru, and then his mind is transformed. And then he can lead an independent life to guide others on the path. So that is, Babaji talks very clearly about that in several articles. I have already mentioned about the forces of nature and the power arcs. They are all utilized for the transformation of man in the way it is required. We proceed with meditation on the heart, thinking of the divine light within, and by so doing, we gradually begin to rise, or to express it better, to dive deep into the inner consciousness, with the result that an Abhyasi begins to feel expansion, this being the first phase. That means we have sown the seed of infinity, or in other words, we have revived the thing which has slipped from our mind. The avidya has now started the wheel which is covering the your intellect, and which will not allow you to know what is the subtle presence of God, starts whittling away, and then you start getting a glimpse of divinity. And as you get the glimpse, you'll start enjoying peace, you start enjoying tranquility, and you'll be able to follow the 5th commandment and 7th commandment easily, which is an impossibility for an ordinary man, because ordinary man is a reactive person. He's a robo. He doesn't have an independent will at all. He is driven by samskaras and vasanas, and then he thinks he is a free man, but he's not free. He's driven by samskaras which are buried and which are lurking, waiting for an opportunity to come burst into the conscious mind, which he thinks that it is his free will by which he is acting. It is not free will. The samskara has come, it has propelled the man to think in a certain way, to act in a certain way. So that is the thing actually. So the seed infinite, otherwise we have revived the thing which has slipped from our youth. So when Babaji gives the true impulse into the heart, that starts the viveka, and then you start getting a glimpse of the fire from which you are a spark actually. This is an Upanishadic statement. They say that how the world came into existence, they said it, even if you see Babaji's article, the 1st commandment is the fire of the divine is still burning. And Upanishadic Guru teaches the Shishya who says, how this world come into existence? He says, we are all sparks from, innumerable sparks came out from the fire of divinity. And so the spark is of the nature of fire. So you are of the same nature as God. So, but then there's a wheel between this consciousness which is trapped in the mind and body of a person, and the fire which is the divine light without luminosity. And the wheel is that avidya. And then by spiritual practices, you can break through this barrier, and then you can breach this mystery and go to the real source actually. Now the second phase opens to view. A man feels the presence of God in every animate object. Every animate object. The third thing we feel is the changing feature of this very thing. this thing is changed and one feels everything as from God and as his manifestation. The fourth phase begins in the state of negation, which ultimately we are to have. We find uniformity in every atom and in all objects. Everybody passes through these lines if the method is correct and the guide is perfect. As we proceed on to the next region, these things are rarefied till we reach the Brahmanda Mandal. There too, these things go on, but they are discernible in finer colors. If the teacher is not perfect, and there can be the danger of getting absorbed in the powers which are not concerned with spirituality. The work of the teacher goes on and on to the final limit. I have discussed about the work of the Abhyasi and that of the master, not touching the technique of the system which the master adopts for the higher approach of mankind, the centers of the heart through which the guide works, and the method adopted to regulate the mind and the senses. The Abhyasi's part is to be perfectly obedient to the master. I mean to say that he should comply with the directions given to him, having faith or at least trust in the master and confidence in himself. We have to search for such a good master who has his approach to the final limit. It is very difficult to find such a master, and in the words of Upanishads, it is equally difficult to find a disciple. But if the burning desire is there for realization, the master will reach the seeker's door. Trust and distrust are two things, and both things are necessary. But what we generally do is that we trust where distrust is needed and distrust where trust is needed. But I can, one thing I want to tell you is, I have been in the system for more than almost 4 decades now. But the practice I have been doing is a casual practice, half-hearted practice, phases of intense practice. Sometimes it's a war taking place between the ego and the impulse to breach this mystery and really solve the problem of life. It's always a war going on in everybody's heart. Like a Mahabharata war, each human being wages a war within the lower self and the higher self. And then in this war, sometimes you gain the upper hand, sometimes the negative forces gain the upper hand. So keep on trying. But I can tell you that my personal experiences, even with even if a little bit of sincerity is there, and the master is so great and powerful, the amount of tranquility and peace which I feel, I think nobody can, ordinary people cannot even imagine actually. So with half-hearted, indisciplined efforts, you can imagine so much of peace coming. Imagine what will happen if you're totally obedient to all his instructions and do diligent practice, then we can change the whole face of the earth totally. Because the master is a revolutionary master. He's not an ordinary man we are talking about. In the end, I would emphasize that realization is not at all difficult for those who have the real craving for it. If the craving is there, he will come on the path by which realization can be achieved in a short time. He's telling you it can be achieved in a short time. The real craving of man keeps him in constant restlessness, and he works only to gain his real goal. While so many of us worship God and offer prayer as a routine, it is only to please our senses. In this sphere, mental enjoyment is there, sense enjoyment is there, and they are caught up by so many enjoyments which forbid them from peeping further into the life meant for realization. So this is in short the message he gave in 1964. We will go to the article of Revered Sir about attempting the finite for the infinite. But before that, this is an erecting a kind of a feeling on an environment so that when we read Sir's article, some concepts will become stronger in us and the mind also will become more disciplined if you're absorbed in pious thoughts. Anybody wants to comment or any questions regarding any points which require clarification? If it is possible for me to clarify, if anybody else wants to clarify, we'll try to clarify.
So there is one point here where Master says the center in us has lost the capacity to understand infinite.
That is what, no. In fact, that is the problem. you know what happened when Lord Buddha attained realization, he was happy, and then for 7 days he contemplated, he knew everything, and then he kept quiet. And then the gods, I mean the gods descended, and then they impleaded him that you must teach people about God realization. Then he says, it is a very subtle point, it cannot be taught at all. He says it is so subtle, people will not be able to understand it at all. And people who have a craving, they'll anyway find God. So my talking about God and teaching about the spirituality, about the center, and then grasping the infinite is a waste of time, he says, because it is so subtle, ordinary intelligence cannot grasp it. And people who have a craving to know it anyway will find it. So why should I talk? But then they plead that there are in between some people are there who want to solve the problem of life, and then they try, but they require some guidance. It is for such people you must go and teach. Then he agrees and goes on teaching about it. So the God is present in us. I mean, all of us know in India, in Hindustan, India, everybody knows that God is present everywhere. We all heard from childhood. Even my brother's grandson, he'll talk very nicely about how Narsimha came out from the pillar and then he killed Hiranyakashipu and all that. Everybody knows God is present everywhere. Do you feel it actually? You don't feel it because the mind has lost that power to grasp that infinite actually. That is what he means by that. That is also called Maya or Avidya. Only the Guru, the power of the Guru only can save you actually. I don't know, Atul, whether I have answered your question or not.
So the point which I was trying to say is that there is inherent finiteness in us.
No, we have come from infinite only. Your mind very strongly believes that you are finite. Erroneously, by ignorance, believes that it is finite. And then it very strongly believes that it will get happiness only if he gets sensual pleasures in the body, if he amasses money, or if their wife and children are happy, or friends are happy, or your caste people are happy, or you earn name and fame. Only in this world only you'll all the happiness is there. So you have to strive to get the happiness from the objects in this world. That is a strong, powerful belief actually. A powerful hypnotism has happened in general human's mind, and then they have forgotten that their original nature is bliss and joy and happiness only. So that is called ignorance or avidya or maya. The other word for it is maya. Mind itself is maya. If you read Bhagavad Gita and all that, mama maya duratya, the mind itself with its three gunas, nobody can transcend that, he says. Unless you surrender to me, you will be a prisoner of my power, he says.
So with the finiteness of mind, it's not possible to grasp the nature of infinite. So the method given by master is the only way.
If you no, but people have done it. They explore the mind, they meditate. Meditation is the only method by which you can pierce this mystery. So you should learn meditation, and through meditation, and even meditation, there's this tremendous scope for falling into the pitfalls. We did a seminar, no? If you try to look into the sun and walk, you will be blinded by the light, and then you have to close your eyes. When you close your eyes, how can you walk on the path? Guru is there who knows all the path thoroughly, and then he will catch your hand and take you there. But you may, if you blindly move in the wrong direction, you may fall into some pit, and chances of failure are very high. The Guru is the person who handles you the lamp to walk on the path actually. Without Guru, it is possible, but very, very difficult.
Right.
Also, sir has mentioned somewhere that I think when he talked about the Gayatri Mantra also, he said, I think we're looking down, or rather the lower centers of us are keeping us occupied, and we are not able to see the Dhi. He says in in Gayatri Mantra, he says the Dhi refers to the spiritual or the infinite
Yeah.
aspect of
Yeah.
you. And we are not seeing that because we are so immersed into the play of the lower centers and the
In
day-to-day.
fact, if a person meditate, like Babuji also praises, and if you contemplate on the meaning of Gayatri Mantra, that is one of the that can take you towards reality actually. And Sir has told me that he has prescribed this mantra to some people who are accustomed to that. And Babuji also says it helps in moving towards infinite. But our method is straightforward. I mean, for people who are, depending on individual cases, whose mind is so accustomed to such practices, you can utilize that practice to help them do correct meditation on the meaning of it, and then try to get absorbed in the meaning, and then that will remove a certain kind of grossness from the mind. And when the grossness is removed, that mind becomes fit enough to meditate on the subtlest idea of divine light without luminosity, which is neither light nor darkness, but a very subtle substance. So ordinary human people are not capable of meditating on abstract subtleness. Only because of Babuji's help, we are able to think about divine light without luminosity. We are able to rest on that very subtle object of meditation. It's impossible. People, you ask them to go and then pray to Lord Venkateshwara, or Mathura, Lord Krishna and Radha statue, it is very easy. But then to think about a subtle, all-pervasive, omnipresent God, mind is too gross to catch that subtle reality.
Can I add something?
Yeah, please, please.
Sir, I have seen with last perfect book study that I've been there is one theme that I'm seeing which you are trying to educate us with, that once the mind of ours achieves the levels of purity as described, the God within us starts to express himself. And the other day I was reading this new Darshana by Dr. KCV, in which he quotes that Lord Krishna has himself said that I will read it.
Yeah.
But he has stated that the experience of God as he is in himself is possible only by grace, not by study, intelligence, discrimination, or austerity, but by his grace alone does one really attain him. And then he concludes it by saying that this grace is the pranahuti.
Yeah.
And this is what we all get a taste of in all the satsangs, in the individual settings that we attend to.
Yeah.
Then again, he basically talks about Kino Upanishad saying, which says, Kene sitam patati kres sitam manaha kena prana pratati yuktaha. By whom does mind, breath, or life make one live? And answer, that is the super force, which is the mind of mind, the breath of breath, eye of eye, ear of ear, speech of speech, that moves all, by whom all are moved. It is this divine grace that is sought to be utilized for rejuvenation and solution of all problem of human life. So this, he's saying, is there in every individual, and we who have been practicing this system as abhyasis, it is just, I'm saying what I was able to contemplate, that for us it is next to impossible to know the subtlety of the system that we are practicing, and basically go into know the system as in terms of a proper science. Until and unless there is a hand holding, the guru, Babuji, has to handhold that individual sadhaka to take him to the states that is required for him to get to know what reality is. And that is, sir, what is our aim. We all are practicing the system because somewhere down in our heart we have this desire to know what reality is all about.
That is
Otherwise,
true. I mean,
otherwise
what,
there are so many problems in this world that one will not stuck with one more problem to understand what this system is all about. Because this is easy, but it is not simple.
no, I agree with your observation. I mean, that is true. But the problems of the world can be, you don't require God to come to your aid to solve the problems of the life with some general principles of, some ethics and morals and certain degree of observation will help you to tackle so many problems. But to tackle the mystery of what is your true nature, there you hit a dead end actually. So even our tradition also, even Upanishads and all that, yoga also, it is the realization happens because of a revelation. God himself, unless he reveals, you will not know the realization. So all practice of yoga or bhakti yoga, jnana yoga is only to purify your mind, to make it fit enough to attract the attention of God. So that when God feels that there is somebody who is really trying to understand him or then love him, then God reveals himself. So realization happens as a revelation actually. So that point is well understood by all people who are in the spiritual field. So even in our system also, Babaji keeps on talking that you should develop love and devotion towards the guru or the master or the divine. Then only that thing happens. Because there is a law actually. Long back I was reading one of the uh, dohas of Kabir. He says, very interesting. He says, the guru and loin, uh, they they like only live. I believe loin only like will not eat a dead animal. It will only eat a live animal. So he says the guru and the loin are similar. He says the guru, just like a loin, will not be attracted towards a person who doesn't have feelings of love and all that. A person who doesn't have a feeling of love is like a dead person. So the guru is not attracted towards a dead person. That means he doesn't have a feeling of love for God or is not a sensitive heart. So I found it very revealing actually, that Doha of Kabir. He says he compares guru with the loin, which is interested only in live things. So practice. That is why in that context, if you see the Tinsukia message, Babaji talks about you should try to develop true love and devotion. So if you have love for God, then he will be interested in you. Anyway, this is a very big, endless topic. We'll move to Sir's article unless somebody wants any further clarification in the article about it. Yeah, we'll go. Somebody can read.
Okay, sir, I'll read.
Mere servant Srinivas garu.
Attempting the finite for the infinite, Pujya K.C. Narayanji. This sentence is from the message of the Master Sri Ramchandraji Maharaj titled Dynamic Path of Raja Yoga, delivered at Bangalore on 23rd 12 1964, covers a very vital aspect of the sadhana in pranahuti meditation. It may be considered as a summary of the entire philosophy of PAM in one sentence. This may be treated as an aphorism similar to Vedanta Sutras. In fact, the whole message raises many aspects of the problem that we face in life and identifies and gives solution to them. Before we discuss the meaning and relevance of this sentence, it is necessary to know clearly the problem that is being addressed by the Master. In the beginning of this message, Master stated, A. Our ancients, when they peeped into it, went direct to find the ultimate cause of the world, the relationship between man and God, and static and dynamic values of things, representing nature. B. He further stated they even went beyond everything, which has resulted in the discovery of some movements being the cause of all existence. When we go to this extent, we find the center and its region giving us the knowledge of their existence. See, further he made a statement, we see everything tending towards the center and the center itself yawning towards the circumference. Continuing, he stated, after our adventure, we initiated the value of our existence and felt the cooperation of the highest power around us. Continuing in the same vein, he asserted that this has resulted in our knowing the main theme that is being played. Then he announces how the central region was opened up by our gradual knowing the function of the movement of the human body. He avers that when we visualized ourselves, we found that man is the epitome of the universe. This added to our advancement, and we have begun to study our own centers, their motions and work, and the functions of the human body. He informs us that owing to the sacred pledge of our ancients, we avoided destructive purposes and we utilize the power for the transformation of man. He states later in the message that when we peep into ourselves with this idea, we find the higher centers focusing into our centers, but due to our wrong thinking and doing, the effect is not coming in at all. He specifies the problem by stating, thus spirituality is attacked by many of us, giving examples of the present day civilization and of those who have gone with unlimited pace of materialism, making themselves as limited because they attempt for only the finite and afterwards they fall off. The idea should be to proceed from the finite to the infinite. It should be the idea that we should also make the finite to be merged into the infinite. He raising the point, what is finiteness, clarifies that the center in us has lost the capacity of grasping the infinite. Thus, he asserts that once we gain the capacity to know our infiniteness, the problem is solved. Raising the issue as to how this can be rectified, he asserts that by adopting only those methods which introduce from the very beginning the character of the infinite. He asserts that this can be best introduced by those who have imbibed the real characteristic within their own centers, who know how to draw in the power and piety from the higher centers to the lower ones, and who can transmit the effect into the Abhyasi so that they may adopt the same character. He pleads with us to ponder over this. We find here the seeds of the system of PAM sown deep and firm. It is necessary that we understand what we mean by the words finite and infinite. At this point of time, as far as I know, we really do not understand either of the terms, and scientists and cosmologists are deeply engaged in educated guesses, arguments, complex calculations, construction of models, and invention and revision of theories and speculations. The cosmologists are definitely undecided and there is no consensus. The problem stated from one of the points of theory of numbers in mathematics may be stated as there is an infinite number of even numbers. There is also an infinite number of odd numbers. There is also an infinite number of natural numbers. Now, are these three infinites the same, or the group in C is more than the other two infinites? This problem was stated by Galileo, and I presented it as I understood the problem. I am no mathematician, as you all know. There are many other classical paradoxes of the infinite, but Galileo's is enough for our discussion. The infinite has been a perennial source of mathematical and philosophical wonder, in part because of its enormity. Anything large is grand and provokes awe and contemplation, and in part because of the paradoxes like Galileo's. Infinity seems impossible to tame intellectually and to bring within the confines of human understanding. This problem or similar problems of metaphysics and physics and mathematics is not what Master is talking about. I understand that Master was taking the simple position that finite means human being along with all that is created, and infinite means God, the power behind everything. The concept of God asserts that God is the power behind all existence. God is at once finite and infinite. He is space, and as such he is measured. He is beyond space, and therefore he is measureless. He is boundless. He is infinite. God is infinite consciousness, infinite bliss, yet he can also assume a finite form. He is infinite, he is finite, and at the same time, he transcends both the infinite and the finite. He is life, he is death, yet again he is beyond life and death, beyond both life and death. God is boundless, and in the field of manifestation, he takes all forms, from that of a tiny insect to that of a large elephant. Many people cannot agree with the idea that God can be finite. But if he cannot be finite, there is a limitation on him that he cannot be finite, that he cannot be a finite, and that would be a blemish. But let us think of one of God's divine qualities called omnipresence. According to our human feelings, when we think of omnipresence, we immediately think of vastness. True, he is as vast as the world, but because he is in everything, God can also be finite. Again, God is omnipotent. Where is his omnipotence if he cannot become a small child, a tiny insect, or an atom? He can be vast, he can be infinitesimal, that's really small. There is a peculiar problem God has. He cannot perceive. He knows, but does not know what he knows. In fact, he knows, but there is no one, no he to know. I think there's a grammatical typo.
That's the correct thing. Yeah.
This is what Master said when he said that God has no mind. It is we, the Homo sapiens, that provide all the senses to him. With our exquisitely developed powers of cognition and cognitive perception, we lend him with our capacity to question and understand, to reflect. It is because and we and not God are Homo sapiens, the creatures that do not do know and know that they know. This is the reason why God cannot do anything on his own and he has to depend on the humans to express him. This is an interdependency that is absolute, and neither the human nor the God can manage without each other.
Srinivas, can you read the first sentence again? Like it's written correctly, but it's I feel it's important. There is a peculiar problem.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, I know. I was also a little lost.
Yeah, in
there.
fact, it's written correctly, but
The way I read that. Okay.
yeah.
Yeah. Okay. There is a peculiar problem God has. He cannot perceive. He knows, but does not know that he knows. In fact, he knows, but there is no he to know. This is what Master said when he said that God has no mind. It is we, the Homo sapiens, that provide all the senses to him with our exquisitely developed powers of cognition and cognitive perception. We lend him with our capacity to question and understand, to reflect. It is because we and not God are Homo sapiens, the creatures that do know, the creatures that do know and know that they know. Okay. This is the reason why God cannot do anything on his own and he has to depend on the humans to express him. This is an interdependency that is absolute, and neither the human nor the God can manage without each other. Okay, I think mistake I did is that do not know, that do know, and know that they know. If God is having no mind, obviously he can have no will. Then what does it mean when we say that our will must be in consonance with the will of God? God is pure and simple consciousness, and its main characteristic is to remain balanced and be equanimous, or as we understand, being a samavarti. He is by himself nothing and is totally ignorant. When we move towards the center and dwell in that region, it is ignorance that reigns and knowledge per se is not there. This is also the condition of Sahaj Samadhi, where every action is automatic and there is no premeditated will that works. In the case of human beings, perfect Sahaj Samadhi may be a far off thing, but in the case of God, that is his natural and permanent condition. This balancedness carries along with it the criteria of rhythm or order. There is an inviolable order in the entire realm of the divine, which includes everything. This is also the nature of nature, and that is why we many times use it as a synonym with that of God. Balance is a condition of nature, and to be in that condition is a call of the commandment number 4 of the Master. As human beings, we are evolving towards our immanent and transcendental perfection. We are aspiring towards the infinite while being in the finite. Right now, we feel that this is God's creation, but that God we think has his own separate existence. But this feeling is wrong. Just as the soul is inside our body, God is inside his creation. Otherwise, the creation cannot exist. When the soul leaves the body, we will die. Similarly, if the God left the creation would also come to an end. God, the infinite, has entered into us, into these finite bodies, which last for a finite number of years. The infinite gets the greatest joy only by making itself finite as well. We have to know, we have to feel, and we have to realize this for ourselves. Only then we see God in his creation. Otherwise, we will think that God is in heaven, and although we are his creation, we have no connection with him. This is crucial to understand the concept of the inherence of the divine in human and work towards the realization of the divine. This is basic to understand the concept of Antaryamin or Dahara Vidya. Dahara Vidya. That is the reason why we meditate on the divine in the heart. Finite and infinite, according to our understanding, are opposites of each other. But in God's eye, they are one. One complements the other. The finite and the infinite always want to go together. The finite wants to reach the absolute, the highest, which is the infinite. The infinite wants to manifest itself in and through the finite. This is what Master has stated, even as mentioned in sub-paragraphs of para 2. Without this mutual interdependency, there will be no true joy, no achievement, and no fulfillment. In and through the finite, the infinite is singing its song of unity, In and through the infinite, the finite is singing its song of multiplicity. However, it is essential to note that the finite is always separative and the infinite always integrative. The infinite always includes all the finites, but whether the finites integrate into the infinite is by the option of the finite. Master, in his message on unity, stated, "There is no question of separation. We are all coming closer and closer. This is a message for all. This is the crux of spiritual education. God is everything, but each person or a finite being has to feel for himself what God is for him. He can be infinite light, infinite consciousness, infinite power, infinite joy, infinite bliss, infinite compassion, infinite strength, infinite knowledge, and infinite energy. It cannot be stressed too often that it is the truth of the teaching which is all important and never the personality of the teacher. That is why Master said that the master, the method, and the mission are to be relied upon. It is important to remember that the true teacher is a spokesman of the truth. All the masters, in fact, are the emanation of this truth, appearing in countless skillful, compassionate guides in order to guide us through their teachings back to our true nature. At first, then, more important than finding the teacher is making a connection with the truth of the teaching, for it is through making a connection with the truth of the teaching that we discover our living connection with the Master. The need for educating people in the path of grace is paramount. This is the logic of the ISRC, as we all know. How can we regain the capacity of grasping the infinite is a question of all serious aspirants. We know our thinking is limited and or finite. Our awareness of our existence is narrow and restricted. We seem to understand the need to think broad, but find it very difficult to do so. We have a glorious mind, yet we find it difficult to reflect the glory of God. We seem to be not capable of even thinking that our mind is really pure thanks to our indoctrination into the material and self-centered life patterns. Why is that people should find it difficult even to conceive the depth and glory of the nature of mind? Why does it seem to many such an outlandish and improbable idea? The teachings of the Master speak of four faults which prevents us from realizing the nature of mind. The nature of minds is too close to be recognized. Just as we are unable to see our own face, mind finds it difficult to know its own nature. It is too profound for us to fathom. We have no idea how deep it could be. If we did, we would have already, to a certain extent, realized it. It's too easy for us to believe than to think. It is too wonderful for us to accommodate. The sheer immensity of it is too vast to fit into a narrow way of thinking. We just can't believe it. Nor can we possibly imagine that enlightenment is the real nature of our minds. When one past thought has ceased and a future thought has not yet arisen, in that gap in between, there is a consciousness of the present moment, fresh, virgin, unaltered by even a hair's breadth of concept, a luminous, naked awareness. That is what we experience. Yet it does not stay in that state forever because another thought suddenly arises. This is the nature of mind. However, if we do not recognize this thought for what it really is, the very instant it arises, and it will turn into just another ordinary thought as before. This is the cause of delusion and is the root of all bondage. If you are able to recognize the true nature of the thought as soon as it arises and leave it alone without any follow up, then whatever thoughts that arise all automatically dissolve back into the vast expanse of void, and we feel we are liberated. This is the exact reason why Master asks us to ignore the thoughts during meditation. We, however, know that it is always not that easy to ignore the thoughts that crop up during meditation and at other times. The answer of Lord Krishna that it is possible to control mind by practice and renunciation is not all that easily practicable for the common man. Here comes the need for help from another person who has controlled his senses and mind. This is what was stated by the Master, as can be seen from subpara M above. The most interesting aspect of this is the finite helping another finite to know the infinite. Thus, we start from the finite and move on towards the infinite. The various attitudes and approaches to sadhana have been dealt in detail in our literature, and here we need to go into those details. Most importantly, with this approach, we develop one of the noblest qualities, namely humility, which paves the path towards our perfection. Awareness of the various powers in the human frame and utilization of those powers are two different things. The materialistic approach tries to use, misuse, and abuse these powers for petty purposes, refusing to acknowledge that those powers are provided to us by nature for the purposes of nature. When we utilize these powers located mostly in the Pindadesh, we become highly isolated and insulated to achieve our wants and desires. But these very centers, when brought under the control of the higher centers, serve the purpose of nature and are of common good. Therefore, there is no need to make this finite.
There is need, no need, guys. There is a need to make this.
Sorry. There is need to make this finite Pindadesh glittering first, so that it can be surrendered to the infinite for utilization for global and cosmic good. Master says that research is necessary to know all these things for the common good of mankind. That is an indication of the hard work we need to do in this field of spirituality. In Pindadesh, the logic is of separation and individuation. Separation has been the theme of consciousness on earth for thousands of years. We have separated into tribes, then countries and empires. We have separated or divided ourselves by race, sex, and religion. We have even separated our own consciousness further from its source, focusing it firmly in the external world and away from the light within. Intuition and the inner aspects of the five senses have been largely ignored in order to focus upon the game of living, and the game plan has revolved around separation. We have even been separated from the records of our experiences over the countless millennia prior to current recorded history. In this materially focused world of separation, we do not even know who we are as human race, where we came from, or how we came to be living on this one small planet within the vastness of the universe. For most of today's population, it is just easier to avoid such haunting questions by thinking ourselves as being alone in the universe. However, even as masters plan and execute, there is a change that allows the human race to set sail in the direction of integration, where we will find answers to these and many other vital questions. The universal theme that is being played on earth today is shifting from one of separation to one of inner integration. Integration basically means people learning how to love themselves and how to love others. Integration invokes a sense of wholeness. An integrated self no longer has the opposing parts which foster the inner tensions that promote a lack of self-love and self-acceptance. As Dr. KCVG stated, the integral view severs nothing, annuls nothing. It restores to unity the divided both in the organic pind as well as in the cosmic Brahmand. Perhaps it discovers that the organic itself is an inherent form of the cosmic or the transcosmic Parabrahman, and as such, analogies of the organic are not ungermane to the transcosmic itself. Seven Paths to Wisdom, page number 118. Integral wisdom, we should remind ourselves, is not just adding up or a total of all that is, but that in which each and every finite has a role to play, which in no way is less significant than the rest. Such wisdom is possible only through the process of coordination and mutuality and love. When people, finites, love and accept themselves, they can love and accept others unconditionally. This opens the door for the further development of an inner sense of the connectedness of all life. Other people can then be seen as simply other parts or expressions of the same fundamental infinite being. All people are seen as one with the universe within us and not something separate that is outside of us. Opposites do still exist in a world of integration. The opposite sex, the opposite poles of a battery, the opposite sides of a coin, but these complement each other than causing a sense of division. Our master uses the concept of a magnetic field in a dynamo, where it is the coordinated and integrative interaction of the opposite poles create the initial impulses for the whole of universe. This is an area of research that scientists may explore. As our sense of inner integration continues to develop throughout, we find that our previously separate compartments of consciousness begin to join together. The subconscious, conscious, and superconscious minds only have to function separately during times when the issue of separation is being explored. But in PAM, since we invoke the influx of the power from the center, which flows down through the different cosmic and universal dimensions located in the human frame and finally reach the heart, the process of integration gets completed. Intuition and conscious telepathy become progressively easier to develop. But purity of intention and dedication to the well being of the universal are prerequisites for this. Integration is by itself a darshana. With it, we see life as a harmonious and complementary variety of thought, feeling, and action. Such a complementary, coordinated, cooperative, and harmonious feeling among the people, finites, is best called as love. In contrast to the emotional relationship between a man and a woman, divine love is a luminous pool of light and not a beam focused on one object at a time. And that is the basis of all service. Such a service brings us to the feeling expressed by Master that we are united in a common cause, keeping towards proper order the good of man and humanity. Unconditional holistic love is the answer to all of life's challenges. We are here on earth to learn how to meaningfully integrate ourselves with all that is in nature. We are here to accept ourselves and others completely and without judgment. One may ask whether we are supposed to love someone who is determined to be non-loving. The secret here is that there is a difference between an acceptance of the outer belief systems of a person and an acceptance of his inner essence. Regardless of that person's outward belief system and whether we agree with it or not, it is the inner essence of that person that we learn to recognize, love, accept, and integrate with. It is such a love of all that is the basis of the prayer that we are asked to make at 9 p.m. The Master's method in this regard reveals a secret that unconditional love will heal the world and there is no shortage of its supply. The universe is permeated and held together by the love aspect of the one Master. The universe was created by three fundamental aspects of original consciousness: will, love, and action. Will, love, and action. Love is the medium that fills the entire universe, while the will of the Master holds that universe together within its embrace. Love is not something that we generate. It is something that we allow to flow through us. We have only to allow it to flow in order to experience its wonder. Every part of space, every part of matter, and every part of our being is filled with the love of Master. Master stated that love is the inner awakening to reality. Such an awakening to the reality is possible only through the service to the finite. That is why we are told that we should attempt the finite for the infinite.
Exhaustively is dealt in very lot of detail. It should inspire us to live the teachings of the Master and then service to the finite. That means if we can spread the teaching of the Master to people around, I think that is important. We should take home messages. We should genuinely try to share our happiness and to make the other person realize that he can be happy only if he somehow brings infinity into the picture. Somehow he has to bring God into the picture. They are under the firm belief that they can be happy in this body and mind and in the world around us, which is finite. But being in the finite, the problem of life is severe and troublesome. So he can be really happy only if he somehow starts looking in the direction of the infinite, and that is possible by teaching them about our Master and his method with a sincere aspiration to share our happiness with others. I think that is what Sir is also telling in the last paragraph. Such an awakening to reality is possible only through the service to the finite. Service to the finite is spiritual service is the real service. If we can make the other person think in terms of the infinite, That is only the most meaningful activity. Rest is all meaningless, and then it's. If nothing else, then we'll meet next Sunday again.